All right, now it is being recorded for posterity. And it is right now 2:30 exactly.
That's when you're supposed to be here.
That says it's 2:30. Okay, is that slow or fast?
That's right.
But I can't see it from here.
It says 2:29, but that's okay, go right ahead.
2:29. Well, then we'll just have to make sure that
2:30.
it's 2:30 now? Okay, thank you.
Hi.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Well, welcome everybody to our Getting to Know You session. I won't try to sing the song, but today we are interviewing Joy Moyer. We had Grant last year, right? Back in, when was it, December, November, somewhere around that. And so now we have Joy Moyer. So I'm very happy to welcome Joy, who will tell us all about her life so that we can get to know her and maybe compare with, no, we don't want to make comparisons as to who is doing what, or who's telling the truth and who isn't, but or whose memory is better. Anyway.
Well, that one's a challenge. Whose memory is better?
Memory is always a challenge for all of us. So, can we begin at the beginning?
Sure.
August 11th, 1927, what happened that day?
Well, this fat little girl was born. I was 10 pounds.
10 pounds.
I forget how many inches. They
Okay.
didn't tell me.
All right. And you were born where?
In Lebanon, Pennsylvania, which is the bologna country. You know Lebanon bologna? That's where they had big factories there.
A big factory making Lebanon bologna. Does that say anything about what we're going to hear from Joy? Don't answer that. And it's in Pennsylvania. And it's actually not too far from another famous spot that we've all heard of.
Grant?
Hershey.
Oh, Hershey, yeah.
Yeah.
There you got the candy bars while you went around and looked. It was a terrific place.
Right. When the wind was right, could you smell the aroma of the chocolate?
Sure.
And made you hungry?
Made
Did it
me
make you
hungry.
hungry?
No.
No? Okay. So, can you tell us anything about your family and your growing up? And was it a good childhood? And what did you learn?
Boy, that's a lot of stuff. I grew up the years that you are familiar with that bring out the fun you had was when I was 5 years old till I was 12, was Long Beach, New York, and we were one house off of the beach, ocean, Atlantic that is, and we took off our shoes in June and left them off until the winter came. It was a great place to live, and my family, we all liked the beach and what have you, so that was a complete time.
That was wonderful. And what school did you go to, and what did you like about the school, or your schools, grade school and high school?
I did grade school and so forth in Long Beach, but then we moved to outside of Chicago, Illinois, and I went to a school named New Trier, which was more like a junior college. It was so well staffed and beautiful. The building itself was lovely, and they claimed the fame of who did I say? I forgot his name.
Well, you mentioned Rock Hudson.
Yeah, Rock Hudson.
Was a classmate of yours.
Yeah. And
Was he your first crush?
No, I didn't even know it.
Oh, okay.
I didn't see him. My friend, though, my buddy, she bought his record. They were record players in those days, and she bought his, and so we all felt pretty special dancing around the room to his record player.
To his music, and
his-
you have a close association with
And
his
it-
school.
A singer was there too, a well-known singer, and I've not been able to recall her name. I should have called my friend because she would remember it. But it was a great school, very well endowed, and a nice place to be. Lots of sports.
So did she buy a used record player from Rock Hudson? Is that what you're saying?
No, it was a radio record player, like so high to set on the table.
But she bought it from him?
Yes, hand to hand.
My goodness. So that was New Trier in Winnetka, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, something happened when you were 19 years old.
You're rushing me.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't want to get to the good stuff too fast. What
Well,
else?
I met this, where is he? Oh, he's right there. Just fresh out of the Navy, and I met him on a blind date, and we went dancing and had a lot of fun, and that's what started the ball rolling.
What started the ball rolling? But Katie came up with a picture here. I'll show him. So what about Joe?
Joe was still in the Navy.
Okay.
He was on the landing, what do they call them, landing barges or something. They used to bring the soldiers and so forth to land.
Mm-hmm.
And he was 6'4", blue eyes, curly hair. Not that I remember him at all. But those were all the things that I wanted a boyfriend to have, and I didn't get it. But I like the one I have. So we'll put him back in the box.
Put him back in the box. Well, Joe writes on here, to a swell girl. I'm sure that Grant said some much nicer, maybe unrepeatable things to you.
Let me think. I'm not sure.
You don't have to share. So you got married, and then what?
We went on our honeymoon. My father was gracious enough to lend us his brand new car, and Grant was gracious enough to get a big dent in it somewhere. And my father said it was okay not to worry. But we went down to the beach, and that was our honeymoon. And a lot of the family was there, sisters, Grant's sisters, and my mother and father. But nevertheless, we had fun. I learned to eat hot dogs for the first time. I never was that crazy about hot dogs, but boy, down there they were good. So,
Was this Wildwood?
yes, I couldn't remember that this morning.
Wildwood?
Thank you.
I thought it was
What?
Cape May.
Well, Cape May, Wildwood is where the, what do you call it, the boardwalk starts, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
Cape May, New Jersey.
We went back there a number of years later with the Grant's two children, and they had their first toffee there, and it was really nice bringing them back and showing us the dance halls and stuff like that.
I remember being conceived there.
Oh, that's right.
Very few people remember their own conception.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It must be quite amazing.
That was because we went on our honeymoon, another honeymoon, on the 11th of July instead of the 19th.
Oh, okay.
You want to get off that subject quickly?
Let's get off that subject quickly.
Okay.
But once you were married, you followed Grant around quite a bit. Where did your travels take you, and your would I say, settling down and then picking up roots and going elsewhere?
Well, I don't even think it was following around because we stayed together. Families were the ones that would do the work for the oil companies, and I mean the husband and the wives were always there, and so that was just a given. You took your children, but it was the first time that we had traveled so extensively. His mother said she thought we were more like gypsies and we shouldn't have any children if we drag them all around the country. But I think it was good for them. So, and we were with them, and it was good. We changed places. Maybe every 2 or 3 months they'd finish testing for oil and then move on to another place. And our job was to get there and set up housekeeping in another place. And I just before we came down, I thought of one of the incidents. I think it was Oklahoma. We pulled in there, and we found a house, and but the lady said 2 things. She said to pull our our car and trailer around the back, and to be sure, and if this young man was crying at night, we had to keep him quiet. So what we had to do was go out in the yard and walk back and forth, now, and that went on, and then he'd pass them on to me. And it was quite a scene. But finding the way into the back of the house was even funnier because I had Grant Jr. in a car seat, and we had a convertible, a very old convertible. And my job was to drive around the corner and come back from the other side to back it in so that we could park it. And I got lost. And an hour and a half later, I came back, and he's sitting there waiting for me. And I was so relieved. Oh, and I was really lost, too.
You got lost driving around the block.
Driving around. I was in a different place.
That's embarrassing.
Yes. But it looks like your kids were none the worse for wear as being raised as gypsies.
No, I think it was good for them.
Good. Good. So, then what?
Well, I don't know. Let's ask them. Then what did we do?
Calgary.
No, then
Texas
Dad
was
went to school in Austin, remember?
Yeah.
Okay.
He went to the Texas University of Texas.
How did you like Texas?
How did I like it?
Mm-hmm.
I liked it. I liked everywhere we lived pretty well. As soon as you settle in, you meet the neighbors and so forth. And as good as it was for the children, it was good for us too. We just had more, more friends to have barbecues and so forth with. It was good living.
Mm-hmm. So, anything you remember about Texas that really sticks in your memory?
All of this stuff seems to be with Grant Jr. because he was the firstborn. But I was driving around they called them the T-heads. They went out into the ocean, big cement, what do you call them? Piers.
Corpus Christi, Texas.
And Grant Jr. would say, I was in that hospital, and they'd drive on. I was in that hospital. Well, it turned out, after I pulled over the car and had a little chat with him, that his father did he get caught with a fishing hook, Grant, was it, or what?
Didn't he get his finger in a beach?
Oh, it was the door of the car. His hand got closed in the door of the car. And he got scared and took him into the hospital to get him checked out.
And never told you.
Never told me and swore him to secrecy. But those are the little incidents.
Okay, and then came Calgary.
Calgary.
And you have some fond memories of Calgary.
Calgary was really great. We lived there altogether 10 years.
What happened in Texas, though?
Okay, we
Oh
gotta
my
go back
gosh.
to Texas. Somebody came along in Texas, I think.
Yeah, named Catherine Lucinda Moyer was born in Texas, and they have what they call blue northers, I think it is. And she woke up and wanted to go come see what the world was like. So we jumped in the car and we got there 2 hours ahead of time. That was all. And then my mother said that she was in the cradle coming out looking around, and she's still doing that. So that was our little girl in Texas.
Still want to see what the world looks like, Katie, huh?
That's right.
All right, very good. And so after Texas, and you can tell me anything you want about this, after Texas up to Calgary, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That was, I think, where we bought our first home and decided to settle down and stay, because oil exploration there was a big thing. And it was really neat because we turned around and we ended up buying a house just across the alley from one of our good buddies, whose 2 of their children were christened with us. And we used to have a lot of fun with them. And we decided, I don't know how we happened to go back to the States. Do you have any ideas? It was,
How and why you went back to the States?
I think,
You did quite a bit of traveling, though, from Calgary, right?
Yes.
You traveled around
Yeah.
vacationing and touring. And,
we did.
Mhm.
Wherever we lived, we traveled around.
Uh-huh.
And that was one of the things that was nice about, like I keep saying, friends. Our friends lived in these places all their life, and they would include us, and we would have great times. It was also a place I learned to drink warm beer, like Germany, actually. And what? So it was a good place. We were happy, and then I guess after that.
And something very special happened also in Calgary.
What?
You had a new arrival.
Oh, I keep forgetting these little darlings. Oh. Yeah, we had our youngest son, Roy, who grew up to be more like this one. He's 6'4", 2, and he has blue eyes and straight hair, but he has his own personality.
As obviously does everybody.
Tell a story about the Calgary Stampede, maybe square dancing in the streets or something.
Yeah, square dancing in the street.
The square dancing was phenomenal. They started the what did they call it? The
Stampede.
Stampede. They started the Stampede on the first day that they had on the, what do you call it? In a corral, a big corral.
Rodeo.
Rodeo. Gosh, what would I do without these little guys? The rodeo, and they would have races with the. Why don't one of you tell about the Grant? You want to tell about the rodeo?
Chuck wagon races?
Chuck wagon races. And
Wild
in our
bull
church,
riding.
We mimicked them by putting. I'd forgotten this too. By putting on robes and dressing them like the cowboys did, and they used carts and stuff. I don't even know if you remember that, but
It lasted the whole week.
yeah. And we would go down and square dance in the street, in the main streets of the downtown area, and they had those once a year. Started, I think, around the 4th of July sometime. But and so between all the entertaining that went on, it just really was wonderful. And the thing that was funny with the people that lived there is that they said, no matter where you live or no matter where you hide, you'll find long-lost relatives knocking on your door to come see the Calgary Stampede. And it was true. They just, you know, one by one they would come and say, could we spend the night? Because there was no place to stay. It was so crowded.
So I imagine the Calgary Stampede is still going on? Is it
Yes.
still an annual event?
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, we'll all have to take a field trip up there one of these days.
You know,
Christina?
that's the need.
Christina, we've got to go to Calgary one of these days for a field trip to the Calgary Stampede.
Tomas can handle it, no problem.
Tomas can drive.
You better tell him that.
Or maybe we better not.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyway. Okay, anything else about Calgary? You did have an incident at the border,
Oh yeah.
as I remember. You're telling
Yeah,
about.
we pulled into the border to check out our papers, and he studied them. He went flipping through them all, and he said, "Well, what's this? You have one in Pennsylvania, had a baby in Texas, had a baby in Calgary. Where's the next one going to be born?" I said, "There ain't going to be a next one," and that was the end of that.
That was the end of that.
Yeah.
All right.
Now I have grandchildren. So
Right.
that's-
Right. And they're more fun because you can give them back, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
but I never did.
Oh. I mean, give them back to their parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, from Calgary, you went to Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
And why did you go there? Why did you go? You ended up in Wilmington, Vermont, right?
My mother and father went up there and bought a house to retire, and it's a house that was at least 100 years old. And if you like old things like that, old homes, old furniture, like I do, you would just fall in love right away. And but we decided that we would build a motel because they had two big Mount Snow and Haystack ski areas, and it was we all skied. I was the last one, but it was, you know, it just was so wonderful. Vermont was, with the trees and the greens and all the stuff. So we got an architect, and we my mother and father had 7 acres of land beside the house, so we decided to build what do you call it, a motel there, and we would go in as partners. And so we built the motel and got it going, and Grant went, he started teaching school. He had to go back to college and then again and get a little more, I don't know, whatever, to teach school. So we really grew our roots there, and we lived there for 30 years, or 33, somewhere in there.
33 years. Marvelous.
It was a lovely stop in our travels.
And you became somewhat active in the civic and commercial areas or interests in Wilmington. You, in fact, you were president of the Chamber of Commerce, right?
Yeah, the Mount Snow Region Chamber of Commerce.
Uh-huh.
But it was funny, I honestly believe to this day that instead of saying, I was the president of so-and-so, say, I was the one who would take the job. There's only not nice words that you used to describe it, but nobody else wanted to do it, so you did it. And that's what happened to me. I was Chamber of Commerce president, and I had the opportunity to meet Mr. I guess say Mr. Bird.
Governor Snelling,
Governor
the
Snelling.
governor of Vermont.
Yeah. And he was a neat guy, and he was born in Pennsylvania as well. So we, the four of us hit it off very nicely, and
Good.
I had him for a speaker at one of the meetings, and he sat there next to me on the podium. I really didn't know whether I belonged there or not, but I was enjoying myself. And he was very quiet, and we called the first speaker, who was the owner of Mount Snow, and he went on, sort of like I am now. And he finally turned the mic over to the governor, and he stood up, and he was so gracious. He wanted to thank everyone for coming, and he had a lovely evening and hoped they did, and he hoped to see him soon again. When a politician is that polite and sits down and doesn't hog the time, you know he's good. And this gentleman really was good. He later came as we had every year we had a big parade, and that was my most fun, I think, doing the parade, because I love parades, and that was what started the Calgary holiday, was a big parade. So this is the same thing, and I did it with antique cars, spacing the people, and
So you organized the parade.
I organized it, and
Nobody broke down in it.
Nope.
That's good.
And the governor was the head guy in the car, but it went from a what do you call it? Say an hour passing time from the parade to past you to 2 or 3 hours. The one in Vermont. Now I'll look over at my kids and I'll see them saying, "All right, mother." Not 3 hours, 2 hours.
No, the Calgary Stampede was about 3 hours. I don't think the Wilmington Parade was quite that long.
Well,
Okay, and
No, because you're in the front car doing your Queen Elizabeth wave, right?
no, she was
Governor
marching.
Snelling.
She was marching and playing her.
Oh, Katie
Yeah.
playing the flute.
okay.
Clarinet.
You know, maybe we should have a wide-angle lens, and for the future, have all of the children come up here too and be part of an interview. But that'll be next time.
Okay.
And somebody else. We won't subject you to that. But now, was that the same event as the Sportsman Show, or was
No,
it?
that was
different. That was different. Tell us about the Sportsman Show.
That was my husband's claim to fame. I don't know.
Yeah,
how
but you did all the work, right?
No,
That's what you were telling me. Okay.
I helped him,
Okay.
and he sold the areas. You know, it's amazing how some of these things are coming back, just like you said.
Of course they do.
He sold areas in the gym and in the new building where people could put their whatever they were. You know,
Booths for the exhibit.
good. Maybe you should finish this, Grant.
No, you finish it. You're the one who's on the mic. So,
Okay.
what was that about the exhibit? Grant Jr.
Oh, it was a sportsman show, so people would buy booths for their exhibit, and people would go around and look at
Oh, and you were
guns
and you were
keep
telling me,
scores
and you were telling me about measuring
Yeah, we
getting
were
down on the floor.
measuring in the space that they could put their exhibits on, and it was fun. And out of that, he bought me a fur jacket, so that was nice.
Well, that was nice.
And he didn't get
And did
anything.
one of the other sportsmen actually shoot the animal that from which you got the fur jacket?
No,
No? Oh. Oh well.
I don't even know where it came from.
So you were running the motel for 30-some years?
33.
33 years. Any good, juicy stories about those 33 years of running the motel?
Yeah. Let me first say that without Roy home, I don't think the lawns would ever be mowed. You want to ride around on on one of those not motorcycles,
Lawnmower?
lawnmower, the machine one, and he'd be singing and riding, and that was his claim to fame. But which were you talking about? The incident that was discovered in a room?
Any incident that you may like to share with us?
All right. One night, or one early morning, Grant ran into the bedroom and said, "Quick, quick, get up. Go downstairs and open the door. Somebody is floating in the pool, drowned." And so I got up, and our friends happened to be visiting, and when I was running down the hall, she stepped out of her room and said, "What's going on?" I said, "Just go in and go to sleep. Nothing. Everything's all right." And Grant had taken this man's body out of the pool and was giving him artificial respiration. And we called the doctor. It turned out that who was the group that...
Mafia?
What?
The mafia?
The mafia had come up and following this guy, and they had neatly folded his clothing on the nightstand and drowned him in the pool in the room, in the tub, and left. And it was pretty hairy. We read it in the newspaper, and Grant's mother came to visit. That just happened to come that weekend, and we were so afraid that she'd read the newspaper, and I don't remember exactly what her reaction was, but it was...
I think she said, "Oh!"
Yeah, probably. But it was a very spooky sort of a thing to have happen, and so that was that. And
Anything else? Anything else exciting in the 33 years of the motel, or interesting? Any famous guests or visitors besides the mafia?
Pablo Casals.
oh, right, they had the music in Marlborough every for 2 or 3 weeks. I guess it may be more than that. Pablo Casal would come and they would practice and Katie, could you tell them what they do?
No, you're doing great.
You're doing fine. Pablo Casals was a great cellist, classical cellist, and
Yes.
he. In fact, I've got a number. I'm a fan, so I've got a number of his recordings.
Oh, wow.
So, so they would practice there in the motel too.
He would lead them.
Uh-huh.
And they would do the concert pretty much, what they wanted to play, and then on the weekends, the people that wanted to see the concert would come. But what was fun for us is the people that came annually had violins, and I can't remember if they had what other instruments, but
All the instruments of the orchestra: violins, cellos,
Yeah.
clarinets, whatever, perhaps.
the stringed instruments
Strings, okay.
mostly. And they'd be up at dawn swimming in the pool, and then they'd go and they rented. Our motel had 7 units in the front and 7 units in the back, and the back overlooked that 7 acres. So it was really beautiful and inspiring, and they would sit back there in the driveway and play. And at night, sometime they'd have a concert upstairs in our coffee lounge. And I remember one woman came upstairs from where the coffee lounge was, and she said, "I have to tell you," she said, "we've been driving for days on a vacation, and I never expected a concert like this. It was wonderful." And they were just up there having fun, you know. It was just, it was pretty spectacular.
So how many years did you have the Marlboro musicians and Pablo Casals staying at the hotel?
I don't think that they were Pablo Casals. Oh, I guess they were. I don't know.
He actually has several famous recordings of himself directing the orchestra from those days.
Yeah, I don't.
So that's why I'm kind of excited about hearing.
I don't know if it was the same group that we had, but I don't know if he recorded it. But musicians usually do, so I would imagine there was some recording. But they were professionals. One was a barber. No, not a barber. Something like that.
Doctor. He was a doctor.
He was a doctor. And they just were wonderful people to have around. And coffee in the morning turned out to be a social time because everybody knew everybody and they were just enjoying it so much. So
wonderful. Wonderful. Now, one of the things that you mentioned was you frequently, like every year, took summer trips. And always looked forward to those trips across the country. You mentioned, how many times did you go across the country in your RV?
My husband says 6 times.
Okay. How many times do you say?
I just drove and looked.
Okay. Anything really, or place or event really memorable from those trips?
One of our grandchildren was funny. Jean-Claude's daughter, she came with us late this was after we were out here now, and we went back for a wedding, and she drove with us. And she decided that since she had a geologist for a grandfather, she was going to pick up her rocks. And so almost every state that we went through, we had to stop, and I'd sit in the RV and watch while the two of them went rock hunting. And I don't know if she still has those rocks today, but that's what she was doing. And the other children, the other grandchildren, we took them to beaches and things like that.
So you kept the gypsy blood.
Running.
All right.
Yep.
Then you came out here.
Yep.
To Southern California. Why did you come to Southern California?
Well, we felt it was more, better for the kids if we were out here rather than having them trucking it back to East when they had jobs and stuff like that. So, and we liked it. We'd been visiting Katie for years, and Grant Jr. moved out. I don't know how long he was here. Do you remember you, Grant?
A couple of years before you guys came out.
Yeah.
And the motel, how did the transition to leaving the motel happen?
Well, we just reached the stage in life where you didn't want to be making other people's beds all the time, or we didn't actually do that. We had people, but we were ready to retire, and the youngest son, Roy, that loved mowing the lawns. And by the way, he told me the other day when he retires, he wants a big plot of land and a motor. I can't remember it, so he can't get one. But anyway, he wanted to run the motel, so he came up and ran it for 5 years with his wife, and they both decided they wanted to come back here. And so the deal was that he had to stay until the place was sold.
Mhm.
And that's what happened. And it's since had another 2 buyers. And it's funny because it was a pleasant life. You had busy times on weekends, but it was relaxing and people were nice, and you wouldn't want to do anything different.
And the motel is still going. It's called the Vintage Motel, and there is a website for it. I checked the website, and it seems to be still actively promoting itself and
Yep.
hopefully doing well. So that's a good thing.
It's I think the funniest thing about the Vintage is getting the name. My mother and father and Grant and I would sit down there in the early evening and try to think of a motel name. Now, just for the fun of it, try it with your spouses or your friends and see how funny it is. People come up with the darndest names for motels. And that's what we did. And then we'd be roaring before we'd break up. And I think Grant was the one who finally decided that the Vintage Motel was nice,
Mhm.
a better way to do it. So,
Very good. So once you were out here, how did you enjoy life in Southern California,
Well,
near the other ocean?
yeah, we really enjoy it. We like our stay here. And not sorry we did it, especially with the news of today. My God, they had
Mhm.
such a terrible storm going on.
Mm-hmm.
But no, we're quite contented. And nice to have our kids around.
Good. And how long have you been here at Nazareth House?
5 years. Well, it's not quite 5 years. We're breathing on the 5th year.
Ah, okay. Well, good. So,
Have anybody bored enough, or do you have a question?
any last questions?
The motel's for sale if you feel like going up. And
Any rebuttals? Okay, well, thank you very
Jean
much,
Marie.
Joy. And Jean Marie, okay.
Joy, when you had a motel, did you do the cooking?
did I what?
Did you do the cooking in the motel?
Oh, we didn't have meals. We had a continental breakfast.
Oh,
And funny that you say that. The one thing that I felt the area was wanting on is they had trouble keeping their chefs when it got to be the busy time of the year. The chefs would quit. And I said, you know, it's one thing to cook. It's another thing to have your help leave. And these were good restaurants too.
Mm.
So,
Okay.
yes,
Katie.
ma'am.
I just wanted to talk about Pablo Casals, because that was a really exciting thing in Wilmington, Vermont. We were really close to the Marlboro Music Festival, as Mom was saying. And I think when I was in high school, I'm pretty sure he was 92 years old. And you never knew when he was going to actually perform, because it would depend how he felt and how he was doing. And I just remember being there at a concert, and he came out on the stage, and he was, you know, really like stooped over, and someone was helping him, and then he sat on a stool, and he would pick up his conducting stick, and he would begin to conduct, and he was like a young man, and the orchestra would be playing and rising up out of their seats. It was so thrilling. The energy of the whole scene was just unforgettable. It was really, really an exciting thing.
Wow, thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Katie. Anything else?
So how many coffee cakes did you bake for your continental breakfast?
How many coffee cakes did you bake for your continental breakfast?
I don't know. A lot.
33 years times 365 or whatever.
really?
Hmm. Well,
What?
Did you use the same recipe all the time?
I don't remember.
Freihoffer's Bakery? Oh.
We, I didn't do it all weekdays. And, you know, that's one thing that made it easier. When the skiing would be on the weekends, and during the week it would be quiet and more vacancies and less cooking of coffee cakes and stuff like that. But
So, Joy,
yes,
last word. Parting shot. What would you like, what from everything of your life would you like us to remember you by?
I guess my kids and the way they grew up and the things that they've accomplished are pretty much top of my list. But don't tell them. They
Okay,
have to
I won't tell them.
Yeah.
When we were talking earlier, you did make a statement, because I asked you, I didn't ask you here, but I asked you how you did in school. And you said, I did pretty well, B's and C's mostly, but not nearly as good as my kids.
Right.
Okay.
So.
Maybe that's a good note to end on. Thank you so very much,
You're
Joy.
welcome.
God bless you. And thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And when are we going to have the next one, Christina?
I'm hoping probably the last weekend of the month, if that works
Probably.
for everyone. Yeah.
Okay, well, see what happens there.